Okay, the last thing we were learning yesterday is all foods combined to an after bracha, all drinks combined to an after bracha. Food and drink don't combine to an after bracha. But what happens if you have something which is half a kazayis alamechia, half a kazayis of burn nefashis? So then you make a burn nefashis. That was basically, if you have a half an ounce of bread, half an ounce of cake, so then you make alamechia. Always make the lesser of the two. Now, what happens if somebody makes a bracha and eats something? Now they wait a long time in the middle of eating. You know, they take a bite and they take 20 minutes later, take another bite. And so in order to make an after bracha, bracha chreina, you need to eat it within the time it takes to what's called kedei achilas pras. Kedei achilas pras basically means the amount of time it takes to eat 3 eggs, which in halacha, that's just an expression, but in practical halacha, it ranges, there are opinions all the way from 2 minutes to 11 minutes. That's how wide-ranging the difference of opinion is. Lepel, we hold between 4 and 7 minutes. That's the accepted ruling. So, if somebody wants to eat something and make an after bracha, you have to eat a kazayis of that food within 4 to 7 minutes. If it takes you 10 minutes to eat the food, then you cannot make an after bracha because you didn't have enough at one time. It could be at the beginning, by the way, it could be at the end. Let's say you're eating bread at the meal. So either you eat bread at the beginning, a kazayis worth within 4 minutes, or at the end of the meal, you eat a kazayis within 4 minutes. But if you start just eating and nibbling on the challah, and the amount of challah you eat is less than a kazayis, in more than 4 minutes, then you can make an after bracha. What is the amount by drinking? So there's different opinions on halacha. But the Alter Rebbe holds, drinking also goes with kedei achilas pras, which means, and this could be a very practical thing, you take a hot coffee. Okay, so you're not drinking it at one time. You're sipping on the hot coffee. So in order to make an after bracha burn nefashis, you need to be able to drink 3 ounces of coffee within 4 minutes. But if it's going to take you 10 minutes to drink 3 ounces of coffee, or tea, then you can't make an after bracha. So halacha says you should make sure that you're able at one time to drink enough, like Paskim might leave it over at the end. 3 ounces, that you can drink the 3 ounces at one time, and then you're able to make an after bracha. But if you're going to spread out the eating or the drinking, then you're not going to be able to make an after bracha. Now, okay, so the thing is like this. Because, again, talking about the laws of a bracha and after bracha. We mentioned yesterday that the 7, it was called the Shiva Saminim. The 7 fruits or species that Eretz Yisrael was praised with, which is wheat and barley, which includes all 5 grains of oats, rye, and spelt. And then you have geffen, teiner, riemen, eretz, shemen, and dvash. So we learned all of them yesterday. So because they're unique, that Eretz Yisrael was praised with, therefore the after bracha on them is different. It's a special bracha. So if it's bread, flour, water, baked, like we learned, so then you have to do berachas hamazon. What happens if it's cake? It's not flour and water, but it's like cake, cookies, cake, whatever, from the Shiva Saminim, then the after bracha is ala mechya. Okay? Now, what happens if you eat like figs, dates, pomegranates, olives, and figs like that? So then there's also a special Ava bracha. It's called Alo Eitz Val Priya Eitz. Okay? Which is together with Talamechia. So if somebody, let's say, eats a kazayis of grapes, or pomegranate, or date, so then the after bracha is Alo Eitz Val Priya Eitz. What happens if somebody ate cake and fruit, or cake and fruit and wine? So then you all include all 3 in the same bracha. Like Shabbos, when you have cake and you have wine, and you have a kazayis and avias, so then the after bracha you make is ala mechva ala kalgolav ala gefen al pri al gefen. So you combine them together. Now here's an interesting thing. What happens if somebody ate a lot of grapes, or dates or figs or something like that? And the after bracha is alo eitz val priyos, but you also ate apples. Now apples, the after bracha for apples is bari nefashos. But what happens if somebody was eating a fruit plate and they had a kazayas of grapes or olives or dates or figs or pomegranates, and they also had apples? So then the thing is, because you're making alo eitz val priyo eitz, so even though that bracha is made dafke for the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, but because you ate that fruit, and you're also eating other fruits, the other fruits are part of the Israeli fruits. Therefore, if somebody is eating a whole fruit plate that has alo eitz and bari nefashos, on the fruits you do not make a bari nefashos, it's part of the alo eitz val priyo eitz. You can't make alo eitz val priyo eitz on the apples, pears, or anything like that. Only on the fruits of Eretz Yisrael. But if you're already eating fruits of Eretz Yisrael together with non-Eretz Yisrael fruits, then you just put them all together into one bracha, alo eitz val priyo eitz. Because you're talking about fruits, and it's part of that bracha. But it doesn't have to be, by the way, fruits that are coming from Israel. It's the fruits that Eretz Yisrael is prayed with. So if it's fruits, by the way, that come from Israel, and you're allowed to eat it, you have to separate truma, ma'aser, all that stuff is very complicated. Then you say alo oretz val peroi seha, because this fruit comes from Israel. But again, that's only the 5 fruits. If you have Jaffa oranges from Israel, it's questionable if you can eat them or not. But if you eat them, you don't make alo eitz val priyo eitz, because it's still not one of the shivas aminim. You make a bari nefashos. Okay, next. Now bread. No, because the only time you make the bracha al arz val peri sehal is the shivas haminim, but the first are wheat and barley. No, it's only for the figs. Generally speaking, when you have Israeli fruits, it's a very big problem. Because number one, you have to separate truma and ma'aser from them. You have to tithe them because they're fruits from Israel. Well, if they didn't do it, you have to do it. Secondly, it might be Shemitah, because last year was Shemitah. It might be Orla from the first 3 years. Now, it's an interesting thing. Orla is like this. The first 3 years, after a tree was planted, you're not allowed to eat any fruits. Not only you're allowed to eat them, they're forbidden to benefit from. You can't take them and give them to anybody. You have to you can't give them to animals that don't belong to you. If it's asher b'ano, you can't do anything with it. So, and the 4th year, in the time of the Bais Din, you would take it to Eretz Yisrael, to the Bais Din. Nowadays, outside of Eretz Yisrael, netter avai means the fruits of the 4th year are already allowed to be eaten. But Orla, the din of Orla applies. Mid Rabbanim. Eretz Yisrael is min hatayri, Chutz La'aretz is mid Rabbanim. No, the difference. One second. The difference is as follows: doubtful Orla outside of Eretz Yisrael is allowed. Doubtful Orla in Israel is not allowed. In other words, outside of Israel, like here, right? If you don't know, you go to the supermarket and you buy fruits, and you don't know, is it Orla or not? Is it from the first 3 years or not? So because it's a doubt, you're allowed to eat it. That's the halacha. You can go eat it. What happens if you're in Eretz Yisrael, and in other words, the burden of proof is to prove it is Orla. Then you're not allowed to eat it. In Eretz Yisrael, it's Orla until proven not. You know what I mean? Because the from places, if you read on the Hechsher, it says, Naki Machshash Orla Neter Avai, and they tithed all the tithes and did all that stuff. It's interesting. In America, or outside of Israel, in other words, you want to go to a store, buy fruits and vegetables, basically not a problem. You could go to any store and buy fruits and vegetables. Meat is a problem. so to speak. In Israel, fruits and vegetables are a bigger problem than meats. Because in Israel, you can't just walk into a store unless the store is under a hechsher. But you can't walk into a store in Eretz Yisrael and just buy fruits and vegetables because you don't know what it is. See, huh? It's very complicated in Eretz Yisrael. When it comes Shemitah years, B'chal, even worse. Because that's why you need the proper supervision on the fruit market in Israel more than on a meat market. It's interesting, here it's just the opposite, but in Eretz Yisrael it's a very big problem.
Guilty until proven innocent of Orla, you mean?
In Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael you have to know for sure it's not Orla. Because a lot of times, if they, I'm not going into the dinim of Orla, but if they take a tree, uproot a tree, without earth around it, they just pick up the tree, and they replant it somewhere else, the 3 years start again. Then they replant it again. Now if you take with X amount of dirt around it, so then the first planting is still valid. You know what I mean?
So if they grow it in a nursery and then take it to an orchard, then it's a 3 years start over.
It depends how much dirt they're taking from the nursery together with it. But it's not so simple. No, in Eretz Yisrael, by the way, fruits and vegetables are a bigger problem than they are in America. I mean, or anywhere outside of Eretz Yisrael.
Is it as bad as having trade meat, for example, if somebody made a mistake or if the store was...
Our law is not only that, tray for meat you're allowed to benefit from. Our law you're not allowed to even benefit from. But if somebody eats arla, it's a biblical negative commandment that you would get lashes for if you were warned, just like chazer. It's the same issue.
What kind of halacha you do on Chabad? We have those things, put yogurt in the mix.
You mean the kiddush of the first minyan? You have to be explicit.
Yeah.
Not the second minyan. Second minyan kiddush we don't have, we have fleishiks. If you put granola into the yogurt, now the granola is most probably ho'adama, because of the pieces of granola. It's not ground up. So then, if you put granola into the yogurt, your best bet would be, before you mix the two together, make ho'adama on the granola, and then make a shahakol on the yogurt. If you put the granola into the yogurt, then the question is, what is the primary and what is the secondary by you? Is the granola to give taste to the yogurt, or is the yogurt giving taste to the granola? If the yogurt is giving taste to the granola, then you only make a bracha on the granola. If the granola is giving taste to the yogurt, then you make a bracha only on the yogurt. So you have to know what for you, in fact for you individually, would be primary, secondary.
So something like a trail mix, which is just a bunch of mixed nuts, adama, eggs, all that kind of stuff. You can make multiple brachas on it?
No. If they're equal to you, they're both the same. So then Shulchan Aruch says, Alter Rebbe brings it down also, you go by the majority.
Which we don't know what the majority is.
Look.
It's a bag of trail mix.
So look. They have the marshal used to have in the cat, but probably still the fruit cocktail.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the pineapples are adama, everything else is eights. You look in the can, I mean, it's all eights except the pineapple, yeah? So then, what do? The majority, and by you they're all the same. Let's say, taste-wise. So then, you make eights. Well, you have another thing, people make a salad, yeah? So people make lettuce and cucumber, tomatoes and oranges and the pomegranates, and they make a lot of mix, eights and adama. So if by you they're all equal, then you make what the majority is.
So if you put croutons?
Croutons could be make it mezainis, because croutons are cake, are bread. Sometimes the croutons are a maitzi, that makes it even worse, but that's a separate issue.
Why not say each one, like ayat and adama? You can take each piece.
If you could take each one out only if the one you take out is more precious to you than the one that's in there.
So if there's like chocolate in the trail mix, and you like the chocolate more than the nuts, you would say chocolate.
then you're allowed to take out the chocolate. If you like the chocolate better than the nuts, before you make a bracha eitz, you can take out a piece of chocolate, make shahakol. Once you made a eitz on this thing, you can make a bracha on the shakol.
Then it throws off, okay.
Be a bracha in vain.
It throws off the order.
Now with that, it's, you're not allowed to.